You can still sense the echo of that supper if you stand outside the Queen's old private dining room at Windsor after midnight. The air, servants say, feels charged like carpet after a lightning strike, because that is where the most catastrophic sentence uttered by a royal since I can't sweat slid across a linen-clad table and detonated a family Cold War. The date was late October, 2 years before the pandemic. The guests a tight inner circle the late Queen liked to call her Thursday set. Log fire, pheasant pie, a tray of Earl Grey creme brulee waiting on a sideboard. Candles trembled as footmen moved between chairs. And there, lounging as if the oak panelling were his inheritance alone, the Duke of York tilted a glass and made an offhand crack about Catherine, part dig at her middle-class lineage, part snide appraisal of her fan magnet popularity, part something darker nobody now repeats. The room turned to ice. William's fingers whitened around his stem and every breath held until he placed the glass down with a surgeon's precision, eyes locked on his uncle. "You will never speak of my wife again." 8 words, weapon quiet. The Queen cleared her throat, signaled for coffee. Conversation limped on, but a new tectonic plate had slipped beneath Windsor, and it was only a matter of time before the tremor surfaced. People assume Andrew's fall from grace began with that disastrous Newsnight interview in 2019. Insiders will tell you the interview was merely the public harvest of seeds already sown at that supper. In the weeks that followed, William, usually so reluctant to meddle, started asking granular questions about Andrew's patronages, his military titles, his office finances, the exact clause that allowed him to pay only £250 a week for a mansion bigger than many boutique hotels. Courtiers soon discovered that when William requested information for context, the context seldom favored leaving things as they were. Royal Lodge became his obsession, the symbol that would not shift. 30 rooms, sprawling gardens, stables, an indoor swimming pool, and a rent lower than a London bedsit. Worse, Sarah Ferguson still padded those corridors, monetizing every anecdote, every selfie-angle balcony, while claiming cohabitation purely for family practicality. William began discreet drive-bys, detouring up the long approach after school runs, noting cracked cornices with a soldier's eye for weak points. He instructed staff photographers to capture ivy choking the east wing, the downpipe rust, the tarpaulin flapping where slates once Saturday. When an aide suggested the vegetation looked romantic, William snapped, "Rot is rot, however you crop it." All the while, Andrew carried on as if charm itself were diplomatic immunity. He ordered fresh teal velvet for the drawing-room sofas, held cigar nights with a dwindling circle of old Harrovian friends, and dismissed rumors of lease revision as courtiers posturing for headlines. What he misread was the heir's capacity for patience. William allowed the Newsnight fiasco to detonate first, watched public outrage crest, then began tightening screws one by one, military roles stripped here, Her Royal Highness shorthand erased there, balcony places quietly reassigned. Each loss was presented as a joint decision with the king, yet palace insiders say nearly every talking point originated in a folder on William's desk titled simply Accountability. Andrew's defenders pointed to lease law. The 75-year contract, signed when the Queen Mother died, obliges him to keep the lodge in good tenantable repair. William responded with photographs of rising damp, unserviced chimneys, a moss-slick tennis court that was once the pride of George VI. Surveyors dispatched by the Crown Estate found electrical wiring last updated when Margaret Thatcher lived at number 10. The lodge, one wrote, requires immediate remedial works or risks being condemned under modern safety codes. William underlined that sentence and sent it straight to the king. Charles, wrestling with his own health battles and constitutional balancing acts, has always harbored soft corners for younger siblings, but nothing erodes paternal sentiment like reputational risk to the institution you waited 7 decades to inherit. He summoned Andrew, offered a face-saving exit, downsized to Frogmore Cottage, where security costs were already baked in, or perhaps to a Grace and Favour farmhouse at Sandringham. Andrew balked. "Frogmore," he said, "was too small for my lifestyle." That single remark, relayed to William in a private call, produced what one equerry calls the coldest silence I have ever heard through a telephone. The heir merely replied, "Noted," and the line went dead. While brothers circled stalemate, Catherine advanced the subtler campaign, remove any social license Andrew might still claim. The Princess of Wales intensified her early years' work, scheduling site visits on days tabloids expected Andrew to resurface, soaking up front-page oxygen. She accepted patronage of a naval base once ceremonial under Andrew's name, turning up in navy overcoat and effortless composure. Twitter compared photos of her shaking hands with submariners to a sun-speckled archive shot of Andrew golfing with a financier now jailed overseas. The optics didn't just favor Kate, they obliterated Andrew. Inside Royal Lodge, anxiety fermented. Household staff, loyal but pragmatic, began updating resumes. A senior housekeeper told a friend she moved her retirement date forward in case belts tighten. Sarah entered what aides politely call content overdrive, flooding social feeds with motivational quotes and videos of rescued fox cubs to prove the property's pastoral worth. Yet each post triggered fresh scrutiny, commenters noting peeling window frames in the background, sagging garden walls gate-crashing her feel-good montage. Then came Andrew Loney's book, sliding into pre-publication briefings like a rapier. Extracts hit the newsroom inboxes at 6 a.m. The words rude about Kate ricocheted through studios long before anyone reached page 310, where the supper anecdote appears under 2 brisk paragraphs. What they don't print, but insiders repeat in low voices, is that the comment alluded to Kate's stage-managed grin and social climbing mother, delivered with a shrug that implied both Middleton women should count themselves lucky to dine within Windsor's stone. One listener described William's expression as officer receiving enemy coordinates. The Queen, impeccably schooled in crisis control, had simply murmured more coffee. But the dynasty's surface calm belied a structural shift beneath. Loney's pages also reveal William's private forecast: should eviction stall in legal knots under Charles, the first proclamation of King William will include a review of all grace and favour leases. Friends say the prince keeps that draft speech in his red box, a reminder clause, circled twice in blue ink. The tension is now so integrated into palace tempo it dictates seating charts and holiday timings. At Balmoral last summer, Andrew was allocated Garden Cottage, a short walk from the main house. When William announced a surprise 3-day visit, Andrew decamped to a friend's shooting lodge in Murray, citing urgent commitments. Palace trackers noticed his Range Rover depart before dawn. Staff guessed he wished to avoid a breakfast queue where the future king might silently audit his presence. Meanwhile, Andrew's daughters tread eggshells. Beatrice, who nurtures a cousinly bond with William, has quietly urged her father to meet halfway, perhaps relocate voluntarily, or at least greenlight the urgent works. Eugenie, living largely in Portugal, warns that British public mood is turning executioner. They love him, but love cannot refinance a scandal-blighted reputation. Against this backdrop stands Charles, juggling monarchy modernization, cancer appointments, and a brother whose missteps multiply headaches. Sources confirm His Majesty has steeled himself. If Andrew cannot fund the repairs and refuses relocation by spring, a termination notice will be issued in the king's own hand. The monarch prefers the lodge repurposed as a visitor education centre on royal sustainability, with neglected outbuildings redesigned as bursary flats for castle apprentices, an echo of William's own housing zeal, but anchored in Charles's eco-legacy. William reportedly smiled at the idea: poetic justice via solar panels and bee-friendly borders where indiscretion once thrived. And what of the Duke himself? Nights are now restless. He patrols corridors lined with framed press clippings from polo victories and state tours, pausing occasionally before a mirror that once reflected global prestige. Grooms say he keeps 2 suitcases in the boot room, one with bespoke suits, the other with personal papers. After dusk he sometimes stands by a rear window, watching the floodlights of Windsor Castle across Home Park, aware that the heir he antagonized roams those ramparts drawing up tomorrow's order of battle. Palace veterans often quote the Queen Mother's maxim: the rooms may be grand, but reputations are the wallpaper. Ruin that and the draft gets in. Royal Lodge, once insulated by lineage and queenly indulgence, now feels the chill. Cracks along the dado rails whisper futures, perhaps a charity office for displaced families, perhaps a public museum of royal childhood, perhaps, for a short awkward span, just another empty property with a for-lease board at the gate. And in Adelaide, Cottage William closes yet another briefing folder while Catherine scribbles notes for a new early years campaign. The children sleep upstairs, oblivious to dynastic chess. Before turning in, the prince stands at the window, looks toward the dark outline of Andrew's estate in the distance and recalls that single dinner table slight, still vibrating through time. Not rage anymore, just granite resolve. The lodge will change purpose. The family will survive. And the future queen's honor, once mocked, will be written into the foundation stone of the reign to come.